A recent and startling revelation caught on camera along the Israeli border has captured the public's attention, igniting a firestorm of concern and debate across the world. These aren't just any videos. They show the most dangerous operations and stunts performed by Hamas, one of which is a video portraying pure insanity in the form of Hamas soldiers paragliding over the Israeli border. This is just one example of dangerous operations executed by Hamas. But before we delve into these savage actions, it is important to understand who the Hamas group is. Keep watching to see real-life footage of the most insane camera footage caught of Hamas soldiers. Introduction. In the intricate tapestry of Middle Eastern geopolitics, few names evoke as much controversy and complexity as Hamas. Founded in 1987, amid the swirling unrest of the First Intifada, Hamas emerged as a significant Palestinian Islamist organization, intertwining political and military ambitions with a declared aim of challenging Israeli control in Palestinian territories. This video seeks to navigate the multifaceted nature of Hamas, an entity viewed through vastly different lenses around the globe. Some see it as a legitimate resistance movement fighting for Palestinian self-determination, while others, including several countries and international bodies, designate it as a organization due to its tactics and attacks targeting Israel. As we delve into the operational dynamics of Hamas, it is crucial to contextualize its activities within the broader Israel-Palestine conflict, a struggle marked by profound historical grievances, territorial disputes, and cycles of violence. The operations of Hamas, characterized by a range of military tactics and controversial strategies, have been pivotal in shaping the conflict's trajectory over the last few decades. From bombings to rocket attacks, and the use of tunnels for smuggling and surprise attacks, Hamas has employed a diverse arsenal in pursuit of its objectives. This video aims to provide a factual overview of some of the most significant and dangerous operations attributed to Hamas, focusing on their impact and the responses they've elicited. It's essential to approach this topic with an understanding of the human cost of the conflict, recognizing the suffering experienced by civilians on all sides. Through this exploration, we strive to offer insights into the complexities of asymmetric warfare and the ongoing quest for sovereignty, security, and peace in one of the world's most contested regions. Join us as we navigate the history, strategies, and implications of Hamas's operations, aiming for a nuanced understanding of a subject that continues to be at the heart of international diplomatic efforts and news headlines. Rocket attacks, escalation, and impact in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Rocket attacks launched by Hamas from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory have become a defining aspect of the group's military operations against Israel. Over the years, these attacks have evolved in frequency, range, and sophistication, representing a significant security challenge for Israel and a focal point of the ongoing conflict. The impact of these rocket attacks extends beyond immediate physical damage, affecting diplomatic relations, regional stability, and the daily lives of civilians on both sides of the conflict. Initially, the rockets fired by Hamas were crude and limited in range, primarily targeting Israeli communities close to the Gaza border. However, as Hamas's arsenal grew more sophisticated, with assistance from external allies, the reach of these rockets extended to major Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. This marked a significant escalation, placing millions of Israeli civilians within the range of rocket fire and heightening the sense of vulnerability across the country. The technological advancements in Hamas's rocket capabilities have included improvements in range, payload, and accuracy. Some of the more advanced rockets are capable of bypassing Israeli air defenses, presenting a formidable challenge to the Iron Dome missile defense system, which Israel has relied on to intercept incoming rockets. The development and deployment of longer-range rockets by Hamas have forced Israel to continuously adapt its defensive strategies and allocate substantial resources to missile defense. The psychological impact of rocket attacks on Israeli civilians cannot be overstated. The constant threat of rocket fire has led to widespread trauma, with many Israelis living within rocket range experiencing anxiety, sleep disturbances, and other symptoms of stress. The need for frequent evacuations to bomb shelters, especially during periods of intense conflict, disrupts daily life, affecting work, education, and social activities. The physical damage to property and infrastructure, while significant, often pales in comparison to the lasting emotional toll on affected communities. The rocket attacks have also had profound humanitarian consequences for the population of Gaza. Israeli retaliatory strikes, aimed at neutralizing rocket launch sites and degrading Hamas's military capabilities, have resulted in civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure within the densely populated Gaza Strip. The cycle of violence exacerbates the already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, leading to further international concern and calls for de-escalation. Each escalation in rocket attacks and the corresponding military responses have significant diplomatic and regional implications. These incidents strain Israeli relations with its neighbors and the international community, complicating peace efforts and negotiations. The involvement of external actors in supplying rockets and technology to Hamas further entangles the conflict in the broader geopolitics of the Middle East, making resolution more complex. In response to the rocket threat, Israel has invested heavily in air defense systems, early warning technologies, and civilian preparedness programs. Communities near the Gaza border have been fortified, and public education campaigns aim to ensure that residents know how to respond during an attack. Meanwhile, international mediators have repeatedly sought to broker ceasefires and reduce tensions, though such agreements have often proved fragile. Rocket attacks by Hamas represent a significant aspect of the group's confrontational stance towards Israel, with far-reaching implications for security, diplomacy, and civilian life. The ongoing exchange of rocket fire and military strikes underscores the entrenched nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and highlights the urgent need for a sustainable solution that addresses the underlying causes of violence. As the international community continues to grapple with these challenges, the quest for peace and stability in the region remains more critical than ever. Use of tunnels, strategic dimensions and implications. The use of tunnels by Hamas represents a sophisticated and deeply entrenched aspect of its military strategy against Israel. These underground passageways, excavated beneath the Gaza-Israel border, serve multiple strategic purposes, including smuggling, military infiltration, and surprise attacks. The complexity of these tunnel networks and their implications underscore the challenges in addressing security concerns, while also highlighting the ingenuity and resourcefulness employed in their construction and use. Hamas's tunnel networks are engineering feats, constructed with reinforced concrete and equipped with lighting, ventilation, and even rail systems in some cases. These tunnels extend from Gaza into Israeli territory, allowing for the movement of fighters, weapons, and supplies undetected by surface-level surveillance. The construction of these tunnels often involves extensive labor and resources, underscoring the strategic importance placed on them by Hamas. One of the primary functions of the tunnel network has been to facilitate the smuggling of goods, arms, and munitions into the Gaza Strip, circumventing the Israeli-Egyptian blockade imposed since 2007. These smuggling operations have been critical for Hamas, allowing the group to maintain its military capabilities and provide for Gaza's population amidst severe restrictions on movement and trade. Beyond smuggling, the tunnels have been used for military purposes, including infiltration into Israeli territory to carry out attacks. These operations have targeted Israeli military and civilian sites, aiming to sow fear and demonstrate Hamas's ability to breach Israeli defenses. The discovery of such tunnels by Israel has led to significant military operations to locate and destroy them, highlighting their perceived threat to Israeli security. The use of tunnels by Hamas has had a profound impact on Israeli security measures. In response, Israel has invested heavily in tunnel detection technologies, including seismic sensors and underground barriers, to counter the threat. These efforts reflect the ongoing cat-and-mouse game between Hamas's tunneling activities and Israeli countermeasures, with significant resources dedicated to addressing the challenge. The tunnel network's existence and use also raise humanitarian and ethical considerations. The construction of tunnels often involves significant risks, including the potential for collapses and the use of child labor. Furthermore, the tunnel's dual use for military operations and civilian smuggling complicates efforts to address the humanitarian needs of Gaza's population while ensuring security. The international community's reaction to the tunnels has been mixed, with some viewing them as a legitimate resistance tactic against a blockade, while others see them as a violation of international law and a direct threat to civilian safety. The tunnels have also strained diplomatic relations, as the materials used in their construction often require external procurement, implicating various international actors in the conflict. The use of tunnels by Hamas is a multifaceted strategy, with deep implications for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While serving as a lifeline for Gaza under blockade, they also represent a significant security challenge for Israel. The ongoing efforts to counter this threat underscore the complexity of achieving security and stability in the region. As both sides continue to adapt their strategies, the tunnels remain a stark symbol of the enduring and evolving nature of this conflict, highlighting the need for innovative solutions to address both security concerns and humanitarian needs. The use of paragliders by Hamas. The use of paragliders by Hamas in the past represents a notable example of how the group has sought to exploit unconventional means to achieve its aims. This tactic involved militants attempting to infiltrate Israeli territory by flying paragliders across the border. Such operations were aimed at bypassing ground-based security measures like fences, walls, and surveillance systems, exploiting the element of surprise. The deployment of paragliders for infiltration purposes had several strategic implications. It demonstrated Hamas's willingness to innovate in the face of heavily fortified defenses. The use of such tactics forced Israel to reconsider and adapt its aerial surveillance and defense mechanisms, highlighting the constant evolution of military strategies on both sides of the conflict. The use of paragliders also presented operational challenges for Hamas. Successfully launching and navigating paragliders required specific weather conditions and considerable skill to avoid detection and interception by Israeli forces. The risk to the operatives involved was significant, as being caught mid-air or upon landing almost certainly meant capture or being shot down. Beyond their tactical use, such operations carried psychological and propaganda value for Hamas. Demonstrating the ability to breach Israeli defenses in novel ways served to boost morale among supporters and portrayed the group as resourceful and defiant in the face of superior military technology. It also aimed to sow unease within Israeli communities, emphasizing the group's reach and determination. Internationally, the use of such unconventional tactics drew attention and mixed reactions. While some observers saw it as a sign of desperation or innovation in asymmetrical warfare, others viewed it as reckless endangerment of lives, including those of the operatives involved and civilians in the targeted areas. Locally, responses varied widely, from fear and calls for increased security measures among Israelis to admiration or criticism among Palestinians, depending on one's political stance and views on the conflict. The mission with paragliders by Hamas underscores the lengths to which the group has gone to challenge Israeli security measures. While not a mainstay of their operational tactics, it exemplifies the unpredictable nature of the conflict and the continuous adaptation by both Hamas and Israeli defense forces. Such incidents contribute to the complex security landscape in the region, prompting ongoing debates about the measures necessary to ensure safety and security while striving for a lasting resolution to the long-standing conflict. Operations, a tense aspect of Hamas's strategy. Operations have been one of the more tense and emotionally charged tactics employed by Hamas in its conflict with Israel. These incidents have not only served as leverage in negotiations, but have also deeply impacted the individuals involved, their families, and the wider communities on both sides. Understanding the context and consequences of these operations sheds light on their complexity within the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The strategic use of by Hamas has multiple dimensions. Primarily, these operations aim to secure the release of Palestinians imprisoned by Israel, leveraging the captured individuals in exchange deals. Additionally, these acts are intended to fulfill political objectives, such as drawing international attention to the Palestinian cause, pressuring the Israeli government, and asserting Hamas's position of strength and resistance against Israeli military operations. Several high-profile kidnapping cases have punctuated the history of the conflict, each sparking intense search and rescue efforts, widespread media coverage, and ultimately, complex negotiations for release. The emotional toll on the families of the kidnapped individuals and the broader societal impact cannot be overstated, with communities rallying in solidarity and calling for governmental action to ensure their safe return. The response to incidents has had a profound effect on Israeli policies and public opinion. The willingness of the Israeli government to engage in prisoner exchange deals, often releasing a significant number of Palestinians for a single Israeli captive, has been a subject of debate within Israeli society. While some view these exchanges as a necessary concession to bring citizens home, others argue they could incentivize future kidnappings and compromise national security. Negotiation processes surrounding incidents are fraught with challenges, involving mediators from various countries and organizations attempting to broker an agreement between Israel and Hamas. These negotiations are complex, often protracted, and conducted with a high degree of secrecy, with outcomes that are unpredictable and not always satisfactory to all parties involved. Operations raise significant humanitarian concerns, including the treatment of captives and the psychological warfare waged on their families. International responses to these incidents have varied, with calls for the humane treatment of hostages, adherence to international law, and the release of captives without preconditions. Humanitarian organizations often play a critical role in advocating for the rights and welfare of those affected. The use of as a tactic in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has long-term implications for peace efforts. Each incident reinforces cycles of retaliation, hardens public attitudes, and complicates the path towards negotiation and reconciliation. For any lasting peace to be achieved, the issues underlying these acts of violence must be addressed, requiring dialogue, mutual understanding, and compromises from all parties involved. Operations carried out by Hamas are emblematic of the deep-seated tensions and complexities characterizing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While serving strategic purposes for Hamas, these actions have profound and lasting impacts on individuals and communities, influencing the political landscape and posing challenges to peace and security in the region. As both sides navigate the difficult road towards resolution, understanding the human dimension of such tactics remains crucial. Bombings, a grim tactic in the conflict. The use of bombings by Hamas has been one of the most controversial and devastating aspects of its operations against Israel. This tactic, employed significantly during the Second Intifada from 2000 to 2005, involved attackers detonating explosives strapped to their bodies in crowded civilian areas such as buses, cafes, and markets. The intention was to inflict maximum casualties, sow fear among the population, and draw international attention to the Palestinian cause. However, these attacks have been widely condemned for their indiscriminate violence and the heavy toll they have taken on civilian lives. The psychological impact of these bombings on Israeli society was profound. The omnipresent threat of attack led to heightened security measures throughout the country, including checkpoints, security barriers, and an increased military presence in urban areas. Public spaces implemented stringent security protocols, fundamentally altering the daily lives of Israeli citizens. The pervasive sense of vulnerability and trauma left lasting scars on the collective psyche, fostering a climate of fear and suspicion that strained social cohesion and impacted peace efforts. Internationally, the use of suicide bombings by Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups drew widespread condemnation. These attacks were seen as a significant barrier to peace negotiations, undermining the Palestinian Authority's efforts to engage diplomatically with Israel and the broader international community. The tactic was criticized for violating the principles of armed conflict, which seek to minimize harm to civilians. Moreover, the international community expressed concerns about the glorification of suicide bombers within certain segments of Palestinian society, fearing it perpetuated a cycle of violence. Hamas has often justified its use of suicide bombings as a form of resistance against what it views as Israeli occupation and aggression. The organization argued that, faced with a technologically superior military, such tactics were among the few means available to Palestinians to assert pressure on Israel and bring international attention to their plight. However, this rationale has been contested, both within and outside the Palestinian territories, with critics arguing that targeting civilians only serves to derail the prospects for peace and further entrench hostilities. In the years following the Second Intifada, there has been a noticeable decline in the use of suicide bombings by Hamas. This shift can be attributed to a combination of factors, including enhanced Israeli security measures, internal Palestinian political dynamics, and changing strategic priorities within Hamas, which has increasingly focused on rocket attacks and other forms of asymmetrical warfare. The international community's response, particularly the isolation of Hamas following such attacks, also played a role in this tactical evolution. The legacy of the suicide bombings carried out during the Second Intifada is a contentious chapter in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For many Israelis, these attacks are emblematic of the existential threat posed by Palestinian militancy. For Palestinians, they are a grim reminder of the depths of despair and resistance born out of occupation. The use of such tactics has left an indelible mark on the conflict, influencing both the trajectory of Israeli security policy and the international discourse surrounding the quest for peace in the region. The use of suicide bombings by Hamas represents one of the most polarizing tactics in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Understanding the motivations behind these attacks, their impact on both societies, and the broader implications for peace is crucial for any comprehensive analysis of the region's complex dynamics. As the conflict continues to evolve, the lessons learned from this period remain a critical reference point for all parties, seeking a path to reconciliation and lasting peace. Border clashes, dynamics, and ramifications. The border clashes involving Hamas and other Palestinian factions at the Gaza-Israel boundary have emerged as significant flashpoints in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These confrontations are not only indicative of the ongoing strife, but also serve as a barometer for the broader tensions that simmer beneath the surface of this enduring conflict. The dynamics of these clashes and their ramifications on both a local and international scale are multifaceted, reflecting the deep-seated grievances and aspirations of the Palestinian people, as well as the security concerns of Israel. The border clashes have often been sparked by specific incidents or escalations in the conflict, but they are deeply rooted in the long-standing grievances over land, sovereignty, and rights. These confrontations typically involve protests, marches, and violent engagements at the fence separating Gaza from Israel. Participants, including civilians and militants, use a variety of tactics, from stone throwing and tire burning to launching incendiary devices and attempting to breach the barrier. A prominent example of such border confrontations is the Great March of Return, which began in March 2018. This series of protests was nominally organized to demand the right of return for Palestinian refugees and the end of the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. The marches drew international attention due to the large number of participants and the significant casualties resulting from Israeli forces' responses to the protests. The Great March of Return highlighted the desperation and frustration felt by many Gazans living under blockade conditions, as well as the deadly stakes of the ongoing conflict. The humanitarian impact of the border clashes has been profound. Hundreds of Palestinians, including children, medical workers, and journalists, have been killed or injured in these confrontations. The use of live ammunition by Israeli forces against protesters, some of whom were unarmed or posed no immediate threat, has drawn widespread international condemnation and raised serious human rights concerns. On the Israeli side, the border communities live under the constant threat of incursions, rocket fire, and other forms of attack, contributing to a pervasive sense of insecurity and trauma. In response to the border clashes, Israel has implemented strict security measures, including the use of drone surveillance, sniper teams, and tear gas, as well as the construction of fortified barriers and the deployment of additional troops to the border area. These measures are framed as necessary to protect Israeli sovereignty and civilian lives, but have been criticized for their disproportionate impact on Palestinian protesters and bystanders. The border clashes have elicited a broad range of international reactions, from outright condemnation of Israel's tactics to calls for restraint and dialogue from both sides. International bodies, including the United Nations, have called for investigations into potential human rights violations. Diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation have been intermittent, with some success in brokering temporary ceasefires, though a long-term resolution remains elusive. The border clashes between Hamas and Israeli forces at the Gaza-Israel boundary are a stark manifestation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict's enduring and cyclical nature. These confrontations underscore the complex interplay between Palestinian demands for rights and recognition, Israel's security imperatives, and the broader geopolitical dynamics that influence the conflict. As each side continues to navigate these fraught and deadly waters, the international community's role in advocating for peace, justice, and humanitarian principles remains critically important. Addressing the root causes of the conflict and fostering dialogue and reconciliation are essential steps toward ending the cycle of violence and achieving a sustainable resolution.